The summer of 1984 settled heavy over Maple Ridge, Ohio, the kind of heat that made the air feel thick and slow. It was a town where everyone knew everyone, where doors stayed unlocked and parents didn't worry when their kids stayed out late. On the evening of July 14th, 16-year-old Emily Parker and Jessica Monroe left their homes just after sunset, telling their parents they were heading to the annual county fair. It was a familiar ritual: rides, funnel cakes, loud music, and the feeling that nothing bad could ever happen in a place so small. The fairgrounds were crowded that night. Strings of yellow lights stretched across the dirt paths, and the sound of laughter mixed with the whir of spinning rides. Friends later recalled seeing Emily and Jessica near the Ferris wheel around 9:30 p.m., sharing a soda and laughing like they had all summer long. They wore denim jackets despite the heat, their hair pulled back, faces flushed from the noise and excitement. Nothing about them looked unusual. Nothing suggested it would be the last normal moment of their lives. As the night wore on, the crowd began to thin. Parents gathered younger kids, and vendors started packing up their stalls. Emily and Jessica were last seen walking toward the edge of the fairgrounds, heading in the direction of Old Creek Road, the same route they had taken dozens of times before. A local vendor remembered watching them disappear into the darker stretch of road, their silhouettes briefly lit by a passing car's headlights before the darkness swallowed them completely. When midnight came and went, worry set in. Emily's mother stood by the kitchen window, watching the empty street. Jessica's father drove the short route from the fair to their house, convinced he must have missed them along the way. By 1 a.m., panic replaced patience. Phone calls were made. Neighbors were awakened. Flashlights cut through backyards and roadside ditches as families searched desperately for any sign of the girls. At dawn, a local farmer made the discovery that would shake Maple Ridge to its core. Near Old Creek Road, partially hidden in tall grass, lay two bicycles, Emily's blue Schwinn and Jessica's red Huffy, carefully placed on their sides, as if someone had taken the time to set them down. There were no skid marks, no torn clothing, no blood. Just silence, empty road, and the chilling realization that the girls had vanished somewhere between the fairground lights and the darkness beyond. By sunrise, Maple Ridge was no longer the quiet town it had been the night before. Police cruisers lined Old Creek Road, their red and blue lights flashing against the morning fog. Yellow tape stretched across the tall grass where the bicycles had been found. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering, arms folded tightly across their chests as if bracing against something they didn't want to believe. In a town where the biggest crime was usually a stolen mailbox, two missing teenage girls felt impossible. Within hours, search parties formed. Farmers left their tractors idle in the fields. Shop owners closed early. High school students combed through cornfields and wooded trails, calling out Emily and Jessica's names until their voices grew hoarse. Volunteers waded through the shallow edges of Old Creek, scanning the muddy banks for footprints or fabric. Helicopters from a nearby county circled overhead, their blades chopping through the humid air as deputies on horseback pushed through thick patches of brush. Rumors spread almost as fast as the search itself. Someone claimed they saw a strange pickup truck parked near the fairgrounds. Another insisted a drifter had been hanging around the gas station that week. Conversations turned tense at the local diner, where every out-of-town face suddenly looked suspicious. Parents began setting strict curfews. Doors that had never been locked were bolted shut. Porch lights stayed on all night, casting long shadows across otherwise peaceful streets. 3 days later, the FBI arrived. Dark suits replaced sheriff uniforms, and unfamiliar vehicles filled the police lot. Agents went door to door, asking the same careful questions over and over. They re-walked the girls' route from the fairgrounds, measuring distances, studying sightlines, calculating how long it would take for someone to disappear into the woods unnoticed. The idea that this could be random was terrifying. The possibility that it wasn't random was even worse. As the days stretched into weeks, exhaustion settled over Maple Ridge. The posters with Emily and Jessica's smiling faces faded under the summer sun. Leads dried up. Tips turned into dead ends. The fairgrounds reopened the following year, but the laughter sounded thinner, forced. Every creak of a screen door, every unfamiliar engine passing through town, made people pause and listen just a little longer. Amid the chaos of the search, detectives discovered something odd in Jessica's bedroom, a small disposable camera, tucked behind a stack of magazines. It wasn't unusual for a teenager to have a camera, but this one had been forgotten for weeks, its film undeveloped. When police carefully removed it and sent it to be processed, they expected snapshots of friends hanging out or fairground rides. What they found instead was chilling, a single photograph that seemed to freeze that night forever. The photo captured Emily and Jessica at the fair, smiling brightly, arms slung around each other's shoulders, the Ferris wheel looming behind them. At first glance, it looked like a normal teenage snapshot. But when detectives examined the edges, they noticed something strange, a shadowy figure in the background, just behind the girls, partially obscured by a crowd of fairgoers. He was leaning slightly forward, his posture unnatural, as if he was deliberately making sure he stayed out of frame while still watching them. The figure's face was blurry, but the presence itself sent a shiver through the room. Investigators tried enhancing the image using the best technology of the time. Enlarging the photo only made it grainy, the man's features hopelessly fuzzy. They couldn't identify him. No one at the fair remembered seeing him. Witnesses gave conflicting descriptions, and some insisted he hadn't been there at all. It was as if the photograph had captured a ghost, someone who existed for only a fraction of a second before vanishing completely into the crowd. The photograph was filed away, quietly noted in the case report but never shared with the public. Detectives at the time were convinced it was a minor lead, perhaps a passerby or a stranger who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But every so often, officers would glance back at the image, uneasy at the way the figure seemed almost deliberate, almost purposeful. It didn't belong in a carefree teenage photo. It belonged somewhere darker. For years, the camera sat in an evidence locker, gathering dust as the case went cold. Technology at the time wasn't capable of pulling more details from the photo, and the man in the background remained anonymous. Yet, even decades later, anyone who saw a copy of that photo couldn't shake the feeling that the man was watching them too, just as he had been watching Emily and Jessica that night. 41 years passed, and Maple Ridge tried its best to move on, but the memory of Emily and Jessica never faded. The streets that once echoed with laughter now carried whispers, and every summer brought an uneasy reminder of the two girls who vanished without a trace. Parents who had lived through it became overprotective of their own children, teaching them never to stray too far, never to trust strangers. The town's sense of safety was fractured, replaced by a constant, low-level fear that some darkness had quietly settled over it. The families themselves aged, weighed down by unanswered questions. Emily's mother, now in her 70s, still kept her daughter's room frozen in time, the shelves lined with trophies and stuffed animals, the bed neatly made as if Emily would walk through the door any minute. Jessica's father spent decades driving the same routes the girls might have taken that night, scanning every roadside ditch, every shadowed corner. Neither parent ever stopped hoping, but the hope became a hollow, persistent ache that refused to fade. Detectives who had worked the case retired, some still haunted by their inability to solve it. New officers occasionally glanced through the old files, skimming faded reports and brittle photographs, but the trail had gone cold decades ago. The photograph from the disposable camera remained tucked away in the evidence locker, almost forgotten. Technology had been incapable of making sense of it in 1984, and without a lead, it was filed as a curiosity rather than a clue, a blurry reminder of the night the town changed forever. Occasionally, rumors would ripple through Maple Ridge, a sighting here, a strange man there, a distant town claiming two girls resembling Emily and Jessica had been seen. Each lead was chased and dismissed, leaving the families with disappointment piled atop their grief. Community events were quieter than before, and strangers in town were watched carefully. Even after decades, the town seemed to hold its breath whenever a new face appeared, as if still waiting for the missing girls to return or for the truth to finally come out. Then, in early 2025, the Maple Ridge Police Department began a digitization project, scanning decades-old evidence into new databases. Files, photographs, and even the dusty old disposable camera were fed into modern systems equipped with AI-based image enhancement. For the first time in 41 years, the forgotten photograph would be examined not with blurry magnifying glasses, but with technology that could pull out details invisible to the human eye. And what it revealed stunned everyone involved, shaking Maple Ridge from its fragile calm and reminding the town that the past was never truly gone. When the AI-enhanced image finally came back clear, detectives could hardly believe their eyes. The blurry figure in the background of the 1984 photo was no longer an anonymous shadow. It was a recognizable face. A man who had been a familiar, even trusted presence in Maple Ridge, Daniel Harper, a former high school guidance counselor. In 1984, he had been 29, respected by students and parents alike, a man known for volunteering at school events and organizing local activities. The idea that he could be connected to the disappearance of Emily and Jessica sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Harper had been everywhere that summer. He spoke at assemblies, attended the county fair, and even participated in the search parties after the girls vanished. To the townspeople, he had been part of the solution, a trusted adult helping the community cope with a tragedy that seemed impossible to understand. No one suspected him. No one imagined that behind his polite demeanor and helpful hands could lie something sinister. Yet the photograph told a different story, a story of someone watching closely, someone who knew exactly where the girls were that night. When investigators pulled his records and traced his movements, they discovered that Harper had abruptly left Maple Ridge just 2 weeks after the disappearance. No explanation. No forwarding address. Just gone, quietly relocating to a rural property in a neighboring state. At the time, this had seemed like coincidence or perhaps a man seeking a fresh start. Now, in light of the photograph, it appeared calculated. The timing was too precise, the actions too deliberate to ignore. Detectives began digging into Harper's past, looking for patterns, for anything that might suggest he had the capacity for such a crime. Former colleagues, neighbors, and old students were interviewed, but nothing stood out, except small, overlooked behaviors that now seemed chilling in retrospect. Friends remembered Harper insisting on helping children one-on-one, always asking too many personal questions, or taking long walks with students that parents thought were innocent. The pieces of a decades-old puzzle were slowly falling into place, and the image from 1984 was the key that unlocked them. The more investigators uncovered, the more Maple Ridge reeled in disbelief. A man who had been trusted by the community, who had walked among them and even helped search for the missing girls, was now the central figure in a case that had haunted the town for over 40 years. Harper's calm, ordinary exterior had hidden something deeply sinister, and for the first time, detectives realized the girl's disappearance was not random. It had been carefully orchestrated. The truth, decades later, was finally catching up with him. When investigators finally traced Daniel Harper to a remote property 2 states away, the first thing they noticed was how isolated it was. The house sat at the end of a long, winding dirt road, surrounded by dense woods that had swallowed it from view for decades. From the road, it looked abandoned, with peeling paint and windows clouded with dust. The kind of place people might drive past without a second glance. But the search warrant gave law enforcement the authority to step inside, and what they found inside would send chills through even the most seasoned detectives. The house itself was modest and eerily quiet. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs hung in corners like silent sentinels of time. Nothing seemed out of place at first glance. No signs of struggle, no evidence that anyone had lived there recently. But behind the house, tucked between overgrown shrubs and a rusting chain-link fence, investigators discovered an old storage shed. Its door was locked and heavily corroded, as if no one had touched it in decades. There was a smell of earth and something faintly metallic that hinted at the secrets hidden within. Inside the shed, officers found items that immediately raised alarms. There was a small chest tucked in the corner, and inside were personal belongings, items that belonged to Emily and Jessica. A silver charm bracelet engraved with EP gleamed faintly under the flashlight, and a faded denim jacket that matched Jessica's height and style was draped over a crate. Each discovery made the air feel heavier, the room smaller, and the realization of what Harper had hidden became undeniable. Evidence of the girl's presence was staring investigators in the face after all these years. Beneath the dirt floor of the shed, they found remnants that confirmed the worst fears, objects buried with care, hidden from view but impossible to erase from the physical world. The meticulous nature of the concealment suggested someone who had planned for decades to keep the truth hidden. Every inch of the property was examined, walls, floors, and the surrounding woods. Each finding added another piece to the horrifying puzzle, creating a picture of how Harper had manipulated, deceived, and controlled his environment to cover up the crime. The discovery stunned the team. For 41 years, the town, the families, and even law enforcement had been searching blindly, unaware that the answers were meticulously hidden, just out of reach. Harper's life after Maple Ridge suddenly became a subject of intense scrutiny. Travel, property ownership, and the places he had lived were examined with fresh eyes. It became clear that the remote shed wasn't just a storage space. It was a secret time capsule, a place that had held the truth captive all those years, waiting for someone to finally uncover it. That photograph, once just a blurry snapshot tucked away in an evidence locker, had become the key to unlocking decades of mystery. In 1984, it had captured only a shadow behind Emily and Jessica, a detail no one could make sense of at the time. But in 2025, with modern AI enhancement, the image revealed the chilling truth. The man standing behind them was no stranger. He was someone the town had trusted, someone who had blended seamlessly into their daily lives. What had once been a vague silhouette was now a face that investigators could match, identify, and finally confront. The realization sent shockwaves through Maple Ridge and the law enforcement teams involved. For years, the photograph had been a silent witness, screaming its secret in a language no one at the time could read. But now, technology had given the town a voice long denied, a voice that finally spoke the unspeakable. It was as if the photograph itself had been waiting, biding its time, holding on to the truth until the moment the world was ready to see it. And that moment had come. Detectives studied every detail, every pixel, and every shadow of the image. They compared it to old records, yearbooks, and public photographs of Daniel Harper, and the match was undeniable. The same cold stare, the same slight smirk, the same posture caught on film decades earlier. It all aligned perfectly. That single photo, taken on a carefree summer night, had become the linchpin of the entire investigation. It was proof that even the smallest details, even those overlooked for decades, could reveal secrets far darker than anyone imagined. The families of Emily and Jessica were brought into the loop slowly, the photograph finally handed to them in a controlled setting. Seeing the image after so many years was surreal, almost unbearable. Their daughters were frozen in a moment of innocence, laughing and happy, while a man with sinister intent loomed in the background, a shadow now made painfully real. For the first time, the parents could grasp the reality of what had happened all those years ago, and the betrayal stung deeper knowing it had come from someone they had trusted. Even after the arrest of Harper and the discovery of his hidden property, the photograph continued to haunt everyone involved. It was a reminder of how much had gone unnoticed, how easily evil could hide in plain sight, and how the smallest piece of evidence could finally speak volumes. What had once been an ordinary summer photo had become a witness, a key, and a haunting symbol of a truth buried for 41 years, one that refused to remain hidden any longer. As the town of Maple Ridge finally began to breathe again, one question still lingered in the minds of everyone involved. How many other secrets were waiting quietly in the shadows, hidden in plain sight, for decades? Emily and Jessica's story had been uncovered, but the photograph reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest details, an overlooked face, a single moment frozen in time, could carry the weight of a lifetime. And so, the town remains forever changed. A quiet warning lingers in the air. The past never truly stays buried, and the eyes of those who vanish are never truly gone. They are simply waiting for someone to finally see them. Because in cases like this, one photograph can speak louder than 41 years of silence, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way to come to light.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.